Action.
So, in our conversations with clients, something's got to change. And as I mentioned earlier, we believe it's really three things have to change. When you look at the landscape of retirement, as I mentioned earlier, you really can boil it down to three questions. There are only three questions that are pertinent when facing retirement. What are they? Well, first of all, what's it going to look like? For many people, they never get a chance to lift their heads and actually think, whether as a couple or by themselves, about what I'm going to do in my so-called later years. Now that there's no fixed date, this is more important than ever. Secondly, when is it going to happen? If retirement is not a fixed date and a moving target, there are a lot of factors that must be considered to help us inform when this event is going to happen. And then thirdly, and much obviously very important, is how much is it going to cost? Now here's the first thing I want to ask you. How does our industry treat these questions in terms of order? What dominates the conversation of most brokers? Well, we are trained, to no fault of our own, to deal with how much will it cost. We're experts at that. We're experts at finding out. You have a great calculator at Federum Bank that enables you to help clients know to the penny what their retirement income is going to provide for them. But we want to change and challenge is not just the notion of retirement, but the order of the conversation. Because we believe this: if you had to reduce this presentation down to one line, it's this. The advisor here in this room that helps their client find their retirement will be the advisor that helps them fund it. Said another way, everybody in this industry has become an expert at what it's going to cost. It doesn't take a genius to uncover what the quote-unquote number is that your assets and your savings will generate. But the real magic and the real interest is in reversing the order of this conversation, beginning to help clients begin with what it's going to look like, and then when it's going to happen, and then finally, how will they fund it? And we're also going to give you some creative ideas on how to do that. In fact, we'll give you three creative tools. This conversation will talk about these three questions by giving you some principles, some research, and also some tools. Now, these tools are not designed to be used all at once. In our experience, advisors look at these tools and maybe they'll pick one, and that will be the only tool they'll take from that. That's great. I hope you use all three. I think they all have a bearing in a conversation regarding retirement. But I want to make sure you understand that there's no compulsion for you or no necessity for you to feel like you have to use all three of these tools. They're all designed to help us have a much more vibrant conversation on this issue of retirement. So let's get started with question number one. What does my retirement look like? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass out a deck of cards, and they're shrink wrapped, so I'm going to ask you to unpack them. And as you do, what you'll find as you uncover those cards is a series of cards that have images on them. So the first thing I'd like you to do when you open the cards is separate those cards that have images from the other cards that have words on them. Don't worry about those cards that have words on them. We'll get to those in a few minutes. So simply open up a deck of cards and spread out in front of you. I know you don't have a lot of room, but spread out in front of you those cards that have images on them. And we'll take a look at those in a second. So I'll give you a second just to open those decks of cards. Put the word cards to the side. Now what you see is a group of images. There's probably a half dozen to 8 or 9 of cards. Here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to take a minute, first of all, by yourself, and listen to me very carefully. In descending order of importance, I'd like you to pick 3 of those cards. Now these pictures mean different things to different people. They're not designed to point you to one particular activity, but they do all represent values, aspirations, behaviors, in some cases hobbies that you may be enjoying now that you'd like to continue. But maybe there's things that those cards represent that also include things that you've never really been able to do now but would love your future to be filled with. So listen, in descending order of importance, here's what I'd like you to do. Pick 3 cards that you believe you would like to represent what your life will be filled with in the future. All right, I'll give you 2 minutes to do that. Now, just before you get started, here's what I'd like you to do. When you've picked those 3 cards, and for some of you, it will be very quick, and for others, you'll be mystified by what they all mean. Just interpret them any way you want. What I'd like you to do, secondly, is turn to the person next to you, because they're going through the exact same exercise, and take turns doing this. Explain why you picked those 3 cards. If I were you, I'd actually ask you to tell them what these cards represent to you, and then tell them why they're so important to you. All right? Are you ready? Go ahead. All right, so we had a really great discussion. If I could, I'd like to hear from a couple of you. We've got some time to debrief. Could I hear from a couple of you of why you picked those 3 cards? Vincent, I know you picked. You were very quick to do that. You picked 3 cards.
Yeah, I picked the sports shoes.
So if you would, just hold it up so everyone can see it. What Vincent's picked up are the tennis shoes. I think, what do you call them, runners in Italy? Tennis shoes?
Trainers.
Trainers.
Yeah, trainers.
I knew there was some stupid term you used overseas. So Vincent picked the trainers. Why did you pick that, Vincent?
Oh, because once I will be retired, I will want to train more, to do more sports than I do it now.
But clearly with the body you've got now, you're already involved in active training, so you want to continue the physique you've got, and you want training to be a part of your life.
Yeah.
What'd you pick second?
I picked this one.
He's holding up a briefcase. By the way, how many picked the briefcase in there, 1 of 3 cards? Isn't that interesting? Look at that. What does that mean to you?
Oh, it means that I don't want to give up what I'm doing. I don't want to give up any. I want to continue to work.
You want to work. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It's funny, in town after town, retirement villages are springing up in places that we never thought would have happened. Major urban centers are seeing the building of massive complexes, retirement villages, that were always earmarked for Southern California or Southern Florida, but they're now popping up in places like Cincinnati and Chicago and Columbus, Ohio. Why? Because if you look at the research, close to 80% of people feel that work, some kind of work, will play a role in their life. Now, before we get too far, let's define what we mean by work. Work, according to what we believe it means, is any kind of productive activity, paid or unpaid, that brings fulfillment to our lives. Let me say that one more time. Work is any kind of productive activity, paid or unpaid, that brings fulfillment to our lives. So what was the 3rd card you picked?
I picked this one.
So what Vincent's holding up is a picture of the little child with the airplane, and why is that?
Well, because I think I would be glad to have grandchildren and see them growing up.
Do you have grandchildren now?
No.
No, you've got young kids, but...
Well, I feel like I will be happy to see them evolving.
And you see yourself active in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So really, when you think about it, what's your first card? What Vincent's picked up is, in summary, he's picked up a desire to continue an active lifestyle that involves working out. He wants to continue work. And I know Vincent, so I know what work means to him. It means all kinds of creative endeavors that takes him all over the world. And then thirdly, at some point down the road, hopefully he would love to be involved in a more extensive way with an extended family. Let's have another example. That was great. Thanks, Vincent, for that. Those were all great examples. All great examples. Okay, before we go any further, there are some cards that have words on them. So for the minute, put the cards that have pictures on them aside. Thank you for doing that. And now pull out those cards that have words on them and spread those in front of you. Now, these word cards represent issues, significant issues. And they're not surprises to you. In many cases, you are talking to clients about some of these issues every day. In fact, some of you build your business around strategies to help solve problems that clients have because of these. These are very serious issues. Here's what I want you to do in the next few minutes. I want you to personalize these. I want you to think about these issues as they relate to you. See if you can identify 2 of those issues that you believe you're either in the forefront of facing now or will be in the very near future. Go back to the same partner you shared those vision cards with and tell them why you believe these are very relevant issues for you. And again, do it through the lens of yourself, your family, your loved ones. For the minute, let's put aside clients and let's think about this personally. All right, stop. I know we haven't really gone very far, but just stop what you're doing. Do you feel what's happened in this room? It's as if the energy has been sucked out of this room, hasn't it? I've asked you to engage in this second exercise, and it was nowhere near as energetic as the first exercise. I mean, why is that? Is it because those issues weren't relevant? Absolutely not. I believe almost every one, well, every one of those are significant issues that can threaten someone's livelihood down the road. But let me ask you a question. You've had two conversations. Which one would you rather have with a client? And why is that? Why is that? It's more emotional. Well, exactly. They get a chance to visualize, maybe for the first time, what retirement looks like. Do you know, I know of an advisor that's actually taken those vision cards. And how many of you have files that you maintain for your clients? Obviously, everyone does. I've actually known an advisor who stapled those vision cards to the actual physical file of his clients. Why? Because they're now a guidepost for conversations every time they get together. This is not just a fun exercise to talk about things we like to do. This is the reason we want to live the new retirement mentality. And I also believe this principle, that if you can see it and feel it, you'll commit to it. Now, we can talk about issues, we can surface statistics and facts about concerns. When we get a chance, maybe for the first time, to sit down and see the positive way our lives can impact ourselves and others, we become motivated to do it. Now, there's also one more card in your deck that I ask you to focus on. It's called Vision Clarifiers. And we put that in there because I really want you to use this with your clients. Some of you may be saying, I don't know how I could have a possible conversation with this. And it's interesting because a colleague of mine gave this presentation not long ago to a veteran group of advisors with a firm that you would think of that would have nothing to do with touchy-feely card exercises like the one you just went through. And at the end of the presentation, one of the grizzled veterans approached him and said, I'm going to try your stupid cards, which I guess was a compliment. And my colleague said, well, if you do that, would you do me a favor? When are you going to have this conversation? He said, well, I'm actually going to use these cards this afternoon. He said, well, here's my business card. Would you mind, after you have that conversation at 2 this afternoon, I'm catching a flight at 5 o'clock, would you call me and just tell me how it went? Whether it was great or whether these cards were helpful in any way. You know what happened? That advisor made good on his promise. He met with that couple. He showed them those cards. They had a vibrant discussion. And by the way, he gave one deck to each in the couple. And they didn't all match. He got a conversation that was something he never anticipated, but he got something more. He got two great pieces of news. One, that broker had his eyes open to a new way of having a conversation, that he'd never known the power that could be had by having people visualize their future. But he got something that was almost equally positive. He got a $3 million account out of that. These cards are powerful. Well, you may be saying to yourself, does this work? I mean, it's a good exercise, and that's a great story, Scott, but does this really work? Well, we actually did some research to substantiate the validity of this exercise. We engaged the work of a researcher who's been on our staff now for close to 15 years. He lives in Connecticut. His name is Russ Prince. He's written 28 books on the subject of the affluent marketplace. He's done a lot of work in the institutional space, and in this piece of research, he actually was working in the high net worth individual space. He interviewed 533 affluent retirees who had at least $1 million or more of what I'll call money in motion. Money that was ready to move. There were all kinds of reasons that prompted that money to be in motion, but it was money that needed to go somewhere at a moment in time. So we were able to identify 533 of those. And what we asked these people to do is to categorize the conversation they had. So our researcher followed up these 533 people and said, if you could you put those three people into or put those conversations you have with advisors into one of